So we're really lucky to have our next speaker. I was introduced to her a few months ago, and sometimes I think you meet somebody and you really know that they get what you're banging on about, they get what you're talking about, and there's no need for extended explanations and rationales as to what my practice is about, what Native Creatives is about, what we're trying to do here at Festival Bridge. And that is Claire, who is our next speaker. Claire Penketh is Associate Professor and core member of the Centre for Culture and Disability Studies at Liverpool Hope University. She is a member of the National Society for Education in Art and Design, NSEAD, and the International Society for Education Through Art, which is INSEA. Claire is also an artist teacher, graduating with an MA Artist Teacher in 2001 before completing her doctorate in art education at Goldsmiths, and her current research and practice explores the relationship between disability and art education. Claire is the sole author of A Clumsy Encounter, Drawing and Dyspraxia, and is co-editor of Disability Avoidance and the Academy with her colleague, Professor David Bolt. She is co-editor of the special issue of the Journal of Literary and Cultural Disability Studies titled The Biopolitics of Art Education with her colleague, Professor Jeff Adams. Claire has been published in a number of journals, including the International Journal of Art and Design Education, Disability and Society, and the Journal of Education Policy, to name only but a few. Claire's workshop will introduce you to ableism today, a key concept in disability studies. She's going to take you through practical exploration through discussion and a range of drawing activities. And it gives me huge pleasure to introduce such a highly knowledgeable and recognised practitioner to Native Creators Summer Programme, Dr. Claire Penketh. So over to you, Claire.
Oh, my face just came all big on the screen there. I wasn't expecting that. Oh, thank you so much, Jen, for that introduction.
You're welcome.
Going all pink, but thank you, thanks very much. And it's an absolute privilege to be here. And when Jen introduced me to the work Native Creatives, and with the emphasis on, you know, this is about you, it's about developing your practice, it's about having a space to explore your practice and get in touch, that really resonated with me in terms of my own experiences teaching in a secondary school for about 13 years, 2 different secondary schools in Liverpool. At the time when the Artist Teacher MA was launched, actually, we were one of the first cohorts, and just to have that refreshing space that was part practice, part theory, and that opportunity to work in studio space with you know, like-minded colleagues was fantastic. So I think any structures that support that are super. So well done to you, Jen, for getting this off the ground. That's super. So I'm going to explain then some things just to get you started. The emphasis is on getting us going on some drawing activity, but I'm going to start off by foregrounding that with a little bit of theory. So I've got some slides to share with you. I think that these have already been distributed, but I distributed the version without images. So I'll share my own screen if that's okay. Sava, is that okay with you all? So let me just navigate that bit. And it's been great actually seeing your all the different information that's come up on Mentimeter with that, you know, just to get a sense of who's in the room. It's really super. And I'm aware, just scanning through there, we've got some people who are primary specialists, some people who are specialising in special education, for example, people who are doing a range of different practices. But I am going to focus on drawing. In this particular workshop, I'm going to focus specifically on drawing, and I'm going to talk through this idea about anti-ableist pedagogy. I should just describe actually on the slides in front of you, there's an image in the centre here, and I have included just some of my own some drawing practice. There's a range of different drawing practices. This was quite an abstract drawing where I was just looking at, I'm quite interested in this idea of different sorts of pressure, and this idea about how we think about coordination, the sort of marks that we make, and sometimes the ideas that we have about making drawings that are able to be erased or not erased, you know, so this idea about erasure in the drawing. So I will maybe mention the drawings at the side, but they are they're just to sort of get us in the mood really that I'm going to be thinking about drawing. So I'm thinking about drawing as an anti-ableist pedagogy. And I think, therefore, the most useful thing is for me to think about ableism, this term ableism. And at this point, if you can everybody access the chat facility? Or is it restricted for this meeting? Everybody can access it. So if you can just let me know whether you've heard of the term of ableism, whether you're familiar with it, whether you feel confident with that word. What do we mean by ableism? Just let me know in the chat, because it's really useful for me to know sort of what currency that term has. And what I'm advocating basically is that drawing, although we might have some exclusionary practices, even within art education, I'm arguing that drawing can act as an anti-ableist pedagogy. And this is part of some wider work that I'm doing. So if we move on this first slide then from the introduction, just to some definitions about what is ableism. And hopefully you've just had a little bit of a chance to say whether you've heard of the term, what you think it means. Just pop that into the chat. I've included actually a little drawing just that I did on the beach in Barmouth here. And just this idea that we will go on to explore the idea about drawing as being inclusionary, and also because we don't need much to make drawings. We can make drawings, and people have argued, you know, we're drawing all the time. So just throwing that little drawing in. So let's think about ableism then. Ableism is described by somebody called Fiona Kumari Campbell as the beliefs and processes and practices that project a perfect species typical human. So Campbell's arguing here that we have certain ideas in society that we have certain types of ability, and those might describe we have an ableist expectation that people walk rather than roll, for example, if they use a wheelchair. So we have an expectation that people will walk. We have an expectation that people will move in particular ways. We have an expectation that people's primary sensory engagement might be through vision. These are all sort of stereotypical ideas. And because of that, disability is, and then to quote her again, is cast as a diminished state of being human. So this idea that our primary way of engaging, for example, is through vision, then anybody who has a visual impairment is seen as being a diminished state of this ideal. And ableism then is also a belief that disability is inherently negative. And the area that I work in disability studies, there's a lot of writing that's being done at the moment that talks about disability aesthetics, the idea that disability, there's a concept called disability gain, which is based on an idea of deaf gain, which suggests that actually those different ways of engaging with the world can be incredibly positive. But as a society, the argument here is that disability is perceived as being inherently negative. And from that, we also have an idea that disability should be improved, cured, or eliminated. So this idea then that we have around sort of like the perfect type, you know, a perfect pupil or somebody who's engaging with learning, for example, we have certain preconditions that maybe are based on ableist ideas. So for example, we have a presumption that people within our education assessment systems, people might develop at a certain age-related expectation. Those are the sorts of things that I'm talking about. I can't see whether you're like nodding. Yeah, Claire, we're with you. Are you? Yes, Laura Jones, Claire Pope. That's really encouraging. That's super. It is so strange. You know, I was actually in the room with some actual live students today, and it was the most bizarre thing. So let's see then how this pans out when we're thinking about art education. And I know that we're going to go on and focus on your practice, but let's think about some ableist expectations then that might shape the way we think about art education. On the top right hand corner, before we go any further, is some drawings that I've been doing, a series of drawings throughout lockdown. I've got a willow tree in the garden outside, which is the most complex thing to draw. Somebody kept telling me about Ruskin's reference to a lemon tree, which I think if somebody had tried drawing a willow tree, they would have had a different outcome. But that idea about complexity, it's also about fathoming out accidental marks, and we'll talk again about this, the way that we might describe drawing, but it's just for a little reference there. So in art education, these are some ableist expectations that we might think about. Vision, or what we call ocular normativity. Now, ocular normativity is where we prioritise seeing, but importantly, we don't imagine an art education without sight. And historically, that has been the case. So, for example, in curricula for children with visual impairment or who are blind, they may have been asked to go and do music instead of art education, for example. So it's this ocular normativity. The norm is that we can see. Another ableist preconception is around coordination. So we assume that we have an ability and that we're going to develop fine motor skills on from gross motor skills, and we think that these are going to improve gradually with practice. So I'm arguing that that's an ableist assumption. Not everybody will develop fine and gross motor skills, and not everybody has the capacity to improve incrementally, just because there's a whole range of us in the world. Another ableist perception might be about becoming independent. So there's an assumption, particularly we can see this a lot in the curriculum, that learners will become individuals with unsupported practice. And we know through our own practices, actually, a lot of artwork works on the fact that we are interdependent. Interdependent. We work with people, and we don't necessarily always want to foster ideas about independence. Maybe we want to recognise interdependence, the fact that we coexist. And the final one I've included here is this idea about concentration. So the fact that we might assume that all of us can concentrate on a single task for an extended period of time. And again, I'm arguing that these are all examples of ableism, in the fact that we have these societal preconceptions. And if you wanted to develop some analysis of policy, you'd actually see it in curriculum documents and in our assessment criteria. But I have to be reminded we're leaving that. Don't even say that I mentioned assessment criteria, because we're going to think about your practice. So again, just a couple of drawings on the slides here, again experimenting with the idea of using really hard 2H or even harder pencils on the surface, really scouring into the surface and then working with this idea of affecting the surface. And then the drawing below that is just a sort of an abstract from some shirts on the washing line, but again working with this idea about quite fluid drawing practices. Now, I'm going to now refer, so although we can think about art and art practice maybe is constrained by these ableist preconceptions, we also know, though, that art allows us to develop our ideas in really interesting ways. So I'm referring now to Craig Martin. So Michael Craig Martin talks about drawing in these ways. So to me, he recognises drawing as anti-ableist. It doesn't have these preconceptions. So we can argue that drawing is anti-ableist. This is why. He said there are two principal misconceptions about drawing. The first is that there's a single form of good drawing, a way of making drawings that is somehow basic and commonsensical, naturalistic representation, against which those drawings taking other forms are considered deviant. The second is that all drawing in the past conformed to the rules of good drawing. and that deviant drawing became exclusive to our own century. And he's saying these are misconceptions throughout time. We have always had this idea that drawing can be many, many different things. It actually cuts right across these ideas around certain types of ability. It certainly cuts across ableist practices. And this is what he talks about in terms of drawing. He says drawing is defined by its spontaneity, creative speculation, experimentation, directness, simplicity, abbreviation, expressiveness, immediacy, personal vision, technical diversity, which from what we're talking about here in terms of ableism, technical diversity, modesty of means, we don't need much to make drawings, rawness, fragmentation, discontinuity, unfinishedness, open-endedness. So we know that these are words for describing drawing, but sometimes, particularly when we're engaging in our work with young people, we know that people can have quite restricted ideas about what drawing is and about how we value drawing and different types of drawing. So, aware that that our session is strapping on and you've got to do some work, I'm also referring here to the work of Pierre Bourdieu in a book called Distinctions. And he says the way that we think about our social, making value judgments societally are through these, what he calls antagonistic adjectives. And I want us to think about this now in relation to your drawing. And here we've got these like opposing ideas, which I want you to apply now to your own drawings, your own ideas. Okay, so he says there's value judgments here that are made between things being fine, refined and elegant, or coarse, heavy, fat, crude, brutal, light and heavy, free and forced, broad and narrow, brilliant and dull. So he offers these as oppositions, and I'm connecting these with this broader idea. How would we think about this in terms of ability and drawing? So this is your task, and we've got a Google document to share. We're going to put you into groups, and in each of the groups, I would like you to explore these oppositions through your drawing practice. And I did suggest that you bring some materials with you. I sent a further note. I don't know if you got that. You could do this through working directly from an object that you've got to hand. It doesn't really matter at the minute in terms of whether that's something you work from directly from observational work, or whether you do this in more of an abstract way. So group one, you are going to work together to explore fine and coarse. Okay, so this idea about these oppositions. Group two, you're going to work with the light and the heavy. Group three, free and forced. Group four, broad and narrow. And group five, brilliant, intelligent and dull. So you're going to work in groups to explore these oppositions. Now you can do that however you want as a group. You can split that up, so you work on one particular word and somebody works on the other word, and then you pool those together. I had this wonderful idea that we would explore that through your drawing. You would capture those via a photograph of your work and then arrange them on the Google document. I'll share with you, I think I have to unshare my screen actually, and then I'll share the document. The document actually isn't as crucial. Let me reshare. I'm more bothered at this point actually with quite a short session. I'm more bothered about you exploring these ideas as a group than you actually working towards producing a finished exhibition. But this is what the board looked like, group one. And then the idea is that we would have some photos and that we could upload those into a shared document to explore these ideas. And and really explore this idea about drawing working in an anti-ableist way, so that anti-ableist pedagogy. So we are on 1 minute before 6, Jen. So I think if we can go to groups, how are we time-wise in terms of your?
We're fine time-wise, because we're due to finish at 6:15, but because you're the last one, it's you know, as long as people are happy,
as long as everybody's okay. So
yeah.
If we say initially 10 minutes, 10 minutes to explore. So we need to get the kids.
So how are the groups working, Sava? How are we doing?
If we can just go to 5 groups, and they can be random. Okay, well, I'm going to just hand over. Let's have a little bit of feedback then. We've got time to do a little bit of feedback on what you made of those. So we were thinking about these what Bourdieu calls antagonistic adjectives between the fine and the coarse, the heavy, the light. So how did we get on, Jen and Pure? Do you want to share your drawings at all? You can go on.
Yeah. If Pui is happy to, we're both visual artists, so we were like, okay, we should really know what we're doing with this.
Yeah.
Cool. And we were saying, if for people in the group who aren't visual artists, you know, this is challenging. It's a definite challenge. We had the words broad and narrow. So I took a broad, and the only thing I could find to draw was a sunglasses little bit of fabric, you know, one of those.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about big, heavy mark making, which was, so my drawing was, oh, hang on, there we go.
Yeah, got it.
Like this, quite a lot of, you know, long marks and heavy marks and lots of cross hatching. And in fact, I didn't see hers because we didn't share them in the group.
Ah, go on then. Do you want to share yours?
Yeah, so I was working with narrow, and there I am. Okay. And so I decided to choose a narrow object. So there's a toothbrush just in the pot, sort of directly in my sort of line of vision.
Yeah.
And I did find this quite challenging, actually, partly because I usually work figuratively.
Yeah.
My first instinct was, okay, I'll draw that toothbrush in a narrow kind of way, whatever that might be. So I thought, okay, well, I'll choose a tool where I can do that. So I got 2H pencil.
Yeah.
Thinner by default. So I usually like using the B pencils. And so I don't know if you can really see, it's almost really faint. I did a really small, almost illustration of one. And then I thought, well, absolutely life-changing. Maybe interpret a little bit more. So I thought, okay, I'll draw a stretched out one. So there's a slightly longer one sort of further down the page. But I chose not to add any details because actually I thought by filling things in, that takes it away from, in my mind, narrow.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm thinking too literally.
No, I love the way you've explored that, and I think ideally then we'd be looking at yours and Jen's work together. You know, when you put those two ideas together in terms of the broad and the narrow, and the suggestion is that broad is good, and then this narrow approach, which we problematize, it's seen as being the negative. But looking at those, you know, it should open up different possibilities. So thank you. I don't want to curtail. I feel like we could get going on a whole philosophical discussion now about broad and narrow. But Ryan, who were you working with?
Sorry, I don't remember her name.
Emma.
It's Emma.
We did talk lots. We just didn't say each other's
You
names.
look like
And I
you're so
didn't dare call him Ryan because he had
Honestly.
someone else in the room earlier, and I thought, oh, I can't make the assumption. But yeah, I wasn't sure.
So go on. How did you get on? What were your antagonistic adjectives?
Actually, I think we got them wrong. So we did fine, And then we started doing broad, but I think we were coarse, weren't we?
Yeah, of course.
But for fine, we were thinking maybe quite flowery.
And we didn't see each other's. We just talked about what elements we were going to put in our drawings.
That's interesting. So you've got this idea of being quite ornamental, sort of fine work.
Thin lines, quite decorative.
Yeah.
And then we got the wrong second word, so we were doing broads. But we were thinking.
And we kept the words, didn't we, in our illustration?
And you didn't see each other's again?
No.
That's quite interesting, actually, isn't it? The way that resonated, and in quite a graphic way. But again, this, you know, the idea about the adjectives is that one is problematized. So one seems to be good. This idea about being able to draw with fine detail in a highly sort of maybe, you know, decorative way, as opposed to something that was coarse and heavy, fat, crude, brutal. And actually this is an important idea in art education, because this whole thing about fine quality design and this fine approach to developing, particularly around sort of decorative arts, in the late 1800s, this is a real concern came with education in art in England in comparison to the European schools who were focusing on observational drawing and really pushing this idea of very fine, delicate drawing. So anyway, thank you very much for that. Really interesting synergy there. There's like some weird telepathy going on, but fantastic. Claire, how did you get on? I was with you and then I came out of the group, but
here it is. Oh, hang on.
Just remind us what yours was. Free and forced.
Light and heavy, I think.
Heavy and light, yes, that was it.
Heavy and light. There you go.
Okay, and so we've got this very sort of light, sort of quite lyrical lines here. And then the other aspects of it, and you had to work on your own, so you haven't really got any.
But not all the time, because I was
joined. Yeah, I joined for the end.
And how did you get on?
Yeah, well, I had limited resources, but I interestingly did something quite similar, which like you can't really see because I was just using Biro, but I don't know if you can see it at all, but yeah, kind of a similar-ish thing, which you didn't look at each other until the end.
Composition on your page, you've got the weighting definitely towards the bottom. Thank you, thanks very much for that. And then we've got another couple of groups, have we? Who else was next? Abby and Laura? Oh no, not Abby and who were you with?
Yes, sorry, I am unmuted, aren't I? Yes,
Yeah, it was with me.
Yeah, how did you get on?
Yeah, we chatted a bit first. We had, what did we have? Forced and free.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of like whatever you were saying about different ways of being free.
Mm.
Yeah, so I mentioned, I don't know if it's useful, but I mentioned a couple of our other native creative sessions that have gone before. So, and Jen does this kind of CPD with us. So I was thinking that being freeing, often she encourages us to use our non-dominant hand. So we've used a left hand before, we've used a foot. So that I found very freeing. Another thing that you'll have to remind me who did this, Jen. It was, I think, Access Art in one of our first series for wellbeing, where they did the writing for meaning. So you're writing words, but they're not legible, you're scribbling. I found that so freeing. I felt like it was a diary entry, because I was scribbling frantically and kind of getting how I felt out, but no one else would be able to read it. So I thought that was really nice. So we talked around what we meant by forced and free, and then I think what we settled on was actually how we're going to hold the implement rather than what we'll draw. Go on, Laura, you did a very good forced to start with, didn't you?
Yeah, sorry, my internet connection is going a bit dodgy. But I did too, like I forced myself to draw something. So I like looked and I was like, right, I've seen that, I'm going to draw it. And then I was like using quite strong, like on the strong marks on the page to do the forced. And then I did on the other side of the page, that was my
free. So it was just kind of, oh yeah, so that's Abby's forced.
And then my forced is blocky and my free is just very loopy.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. And I will have to apologise and leave you at this point. It's been lovely.
You need to be wrapping up soon. But thank you ever so much. And it's great that you've made connections as well with the other sessions. I think that's a really positive thing to be able to look at how the connections that, you know, come through from the sessions. And Lucy, who were you with?
We didn't introduce ourselves. We just had a good chat about Newcastle.
A good chat about Newcastle.
So I'm not sure.
And how did you get on? Did you have a look at your antagonistic adjectives?
We didn't look. We chatted and drew, which is quite nice because I work in a school for deaf, so I can't chat and draw normally. We have to stop and look at each other. So yeah, that was quite nice. So I did a light bulb. Brilliant.
Oh,
yeah.
Brilliant.
A brilliant light bulb.
Yeah.
Bit figurative, but
no, but it's also metaphorical, isn't it, in terms of light bulb moments?
Yes.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I don't want to have left anybody out. So did we have anybody else at all? Speak now.
Rosie's not feeling 100% today, so I think she was going to maintain keeping her camera off.
And you're very welcome to share anything with us if you want to, Rosie. I'm just aware as well that we're just going to head back to probably just rounding up, and I need to hand back over to Jen. But I think just one thing I just wanted to finish off, just share this again, is just this idea that you know, that within drawing practices, it opens up these things. And although Bourdieu identifies these as having these problematic value judgments, sometimes we bring those into the studio ourselves, but we know that actually drawing and working with these ideas are really productive. So rather than problematizing the coarse, the heavy fat, crude, the heavy, the forced, the narrow, the dull, these all become a really rich resource for drawing practice. And that's where I'm going to finish. And there are some, if you've had the slides, there's a little list with some references on there. And if anybody's interested, I've got a couple of copies of these. This was has just been produced. It's a journal of drawing research theory and practice. Anybody want to email me? I'll send it in the post. You'll have to send me your address.
Me, please.
Who said that?
Jen, I said it.
Jen's dipped it. Sorry, you're all too slow.
No. I can't do that to our teachers. No, someone else can bag it.
Well, you're very welcome, and you can just let me know if anybody says that they want to have that. Oh, Lucy says yes, please. Where's Lucy?
Lucy is. Give us a wave, Lucy. There she is.
Lucy with the light bulb.
Lucy with the light bulb. Thanks.
Light bulb, brilliant. If you let me know address, Jen, and then I can just send that.
Yeah. Okay. Claire, thank you so much. That was brilliant. I have learned so much. You have talked to me about ableism a little bit before, and I have when you introduced me to the concept, and I went away and did some reading, and it's quite a complicated thing to get your head around. But the way you have explained it today, for me, has kind of clarified what it is, and that was so interesting. Thank you so much. And to be able to do a task which kind of relates and puts into practice the things that you're talking about from a kind of academic way to a practical way is really nice. So thank you very, very, very much. All of your details are being put into the chat box, and I'm sure if you follow Claire on Twitter, you can also contact her as well that way. I have to just say at this point, because you were all spotlighted when you showed your drawings, you will be on the recordings. So if you don't want to be on those recordings, just send us an email at Festival Bridge and let us know that you'd rather not, and we can remove you from it. So that's fine. We don't want you to feel that you have to be in the recording. And the slides will be available when the recording is on our website as well, so you can have access to those too. Does anybody have any burning questions they would like to ask Claire as a kind of as a closing thought? Or are you all ready for your glass of wine for the end of Native Creatives? if you've got any questions, fantastic sessions.
Oh, thanks, Lucy.
There's our email address. Do join the Native Creatives Facebook page. Do follow us at Bridge on Twitter with the hashtag Native Creatives. As I said before, if anybody would like to be part of our focus group to talk about programming and what we can do in the future to help you teachers with personal and professional practice, then do get in touch. We want to keep this conversation going. We want to know that there has been action taken from these events, and that things that we can bring back into the sessions in the autumn. I'm hoping that we'll get some of you teachers to come back and say what action you have taken, if any, if anybody is brave enough. So we'll see if that happens. But once again, thanks so much, especially those people who've come to all 6 sessions this week. And thank you again, Claire, for an amazing, amazing session.
Absolute pleasure. Great to meet everybody. I hope you all enjoy your summer when you get there.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Bye-bye.